And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names, and I didn't warn you we were going to go live, but we're going to have the big fun. So how you going anyway, Sophie? What's happening?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excited. So I feel like I'm a little like you guys have got your hair on point. I've got my bloody shower hair going, but I'm very well. I'm not conscious, not self-conscious at all at the moment. But how you going, Joe? What's happening, man?
Well, I'm very excited. I'm excited to have Sophie on. I've known Sophie. Well, Sophie, you've been in the group for how long? Like 3 years, like when it started. So
Yeah,
it's cool to have you here, teaching the insights. Because Geelong
the OGs of Oz
yeah,
property.
that's what we're going to cover off a little bit. The OGs of property is the Geelong market, and it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting insights to be shared tonight. So I'm excited for that. Jeff, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I said I suppose you were asking me because you don't normally ask me how I'm going. So I'm very chuffed you asked me, Joe. No, going well. We've already talked. I already sort of just preempted and said I'm feeling self-conscious about my hair situation, but no, going well. So I'm excited. I think people are messaging, asking where we are. So because I think we're a little early in what we normally. We're probably just about on time as to what we normally are. But no, tonight is going to be an epic session. And one of the reasons we wanted to get you on, Sophie, is in a couple of weeks' time, I believe it's the 10th of June, if memory serves it correct.
Correct.
Is it not the 10th?
It's a long weekend. 14th.
Oh, yeah, it's not on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's the, let's see, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th of June, isn't it?
It is going to be Oz Properties' first live event in collaboration with the amazing Sophie.
It's probably the other way around, Joe. To be very clear, Sophie and her team are the ones organising this, and we've happened to cotton on. So we're collaborating with Sophie's team, not the other way around. Because I don't want to take credit for organising. You can if you want to, Joe, but I'm not going to.
No, we have absolutely hijacked and taken all of it. But
you take all credit for the amazing posters for the event. Couldn't do it any better.
Well, actually, I'm in there as well.
Yeah. Thinking outside the box, it's going to be a great event. So, but I think there's a lot of sort of talk, and we're going to, I suppose, we'll unpack a lot of things. But the thing that happened yesterday, the budget, the land tax situation, Victoria, elephant in the room, not elephant, but I suppose the most current kind of situation that investors will be facing in Victoria. And then we're going to talk to, I suppose, around the grounds in Geelong. So what everything looks like, what's the lay of the land in Geelong, the suburbs, as Joe likes to say, the hot spots from the not spots. I just like to say the hot spots from the not so hot spots, because that's probably a little nicer to these not spots. But also as well, we're going to talk about where there's opportunities and just there's going to be plenty of wisdom shared about Geelong and the Victorian investing sort of market, what it's like to be a property investor as a landlord in Victoria as well, because that's it's crucial to know that, because look, I've never owned a property in Victoria, to be very open, so I'll probably learn a thing or two tonight as well. How about you, Joe? You know everything about owning in Victoria, mate. You like the Mayor of Geelong, aren't you? Or Mayor of Adelaide, Mayor of Geelong. What next?
Not just yet. I haven't got the key. To the city, but I do know what it is like to own in Geelong and in Victoria as well. So it's interesting. It's an interesting game. I think like the way rules are set up from a government perspective really change the investing landscape. And if you're not really in tune with them, you might be missing opportunity and gaining opportunity as well. So I think we'll dive deep into that too. So
shall we go quote of the week? Who wants to go first?
Go on, Sophie.
Oh, Sophie. Okay.
I've chosen one from Eckhart Tolle today. Worry pretends to be necessary but serves no useful purpose.
Ooh, that's a fantastic one. I think it's very apt in the current, given what's just been announced yesterday and any sort of new changes that are announced to legislation. People like run around like their heads on fire and they're just like, oh no, everything's going to go wrong, everything's going bad. But I don't know. I just think, okay, cool, that's happened. Let's what does it mean, and what can I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also, where's the opportunity? I saw one of the comments when we asked where's the hot spots and not spots in Geelong, and they said new land tax rules, not in Victoria. So all of a sudden they've just ruled out all of Victoria.
Yep.
one small little rule. Okay.
And interestingly, Joe, because you know how last year July with that old Queensland land tax, which ultimately got repealed, I wouldn't hold your breath for this one, because this one sounds like it's just going to happen. It's not going to, as much backlash as it's going to be. I wouldn't sort of bank on this one being repealed. But people were like, oh no, but Queensland's going to be horrible. Everything's going to cost me so much. And people were selling up left, right, and center. And now you started to, I mean, you're starting to see, like Queensland, even through the grapevine, through our sort of people we know, things are starting to heat up a little bit in Brisbane again. So if you'd have sold, you potentially are missing a lot of sort of potential upside. I'm not saying that's going to happen in Victoria, but yeah, it's just, so yeah, great quote. I love it.
What's yours, mate?
So mine is in the sort of tone of what we're talking about. It is never let a crisis go to waste, by Winston Churchill. So sort of talk to, I'm not saying this is a crisis. I'm not saying that putting a land tax and slugging people an extra 1,500 or 1,300, whatever it is a crisis, but it's for some people, they do see it like that. So don't let it go to waste. Like, see where you can just look a bit longer term, I suppose.
I like it. Okay, mine.
How about you, Joe? What are you up to, man?
Mine is, it's not the employer who pays the wages. Employers only handle the money. It's the customer who pays the wages. That was done by Henry Ford. Interesting.
Oh, Henry.
Old Henry Ford. You know, at the end of the day, it is the customer that is paying it. So you have to look after them as much as possible. And I think that from the government coffers, the government has to look after, the state government has to look after the people that it's in. So I was trying to kind of connect those two worlds together with our silly little quotes.
That's really funny.
Depends on your political philosophy, Joe.
Jeff and I were talking a little bit about that today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
It's important, because a lot of people, and where we got to, I'll let you tell where we got to, because you were the one who came up with a brilliant insight. It wasn't me. I was just along for the ride for the story. But what is what's your perspective on the customer and what's the situation?
Yeah. So over the years, I've been doing this for 13 years now. And the one thing that I educate my investors on when they come on and us manage their property is, I say, look, as soon as you engage me to be a property manager, we're now partners in this, and it's an investment. And any investment I treat as if it's a business. It's got to do with ROI and, you know, as if you're running a business. And when we look at what a business is, it all comes down to the customer experience. Everything comes down to customer experience. Your property is the product. So who's actually the one that is using the product? Who's the customer? It's the tenant. So their experience in this whole thing is just as important as the investor and as the partner to create this harmony, I guess, with property investing.
Yeah.
No slumlords allowed. Yeah, a lot of the time there's like tenants get a bad rap, and it's often can be an adversarial, not always, but it can get a little bit adversarial between landlord and tenant. And I don't think it necessarily needs to 100% be that way. And look, sometimes you need to bring out you got the carrot and stick, I suppose. I prefer to use the carrot. And I mean, I've been a tenant as well. So you sort of, you've sort of had some interesting landlords sort of try and pin some sort of post vacating the property sort of cleaning charges on you, and just like, well, I don't know, what's that all stem from? Why are you trying to, like, I don't think I did. I thought I was a good tenant, or we thought we were good tenants. But anyway, enough about me. So should we get into the lovely Sophie?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I just wanted to give a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, because I feel like we're a little bit scattered on what we're going to cover off. Today is all about the Geelong market and a whole holistic overview of it. Where are the hot pockets? Where are the not pockets? What are some of the suburbs to look out for? Where are the opportunities? And then we're going to look at price points. What is a 400 to 550 purchase? Like, where would we be looking? What is the 550 to 650? And what happens if you have 650 and above, and where the opportunities are? So that's kind of what we're going to be covering throughout this session. So if you are interested in Victoria, but also if you're not interested about Victoria, it's awesome to see someone else's view and opinion on where they see value, because value translates to any market. You can translate a lot of what you're going to be learning today to WA, to New South Wales, to Victoria. So with that, let's dive into the session. Okay, you do it, Jeff. You click the button.
Click the button. I didn't know I was clicking the button, Joe.
The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yields, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia, and not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey.
Good tune. Yeah, back. Oh, Joe's doing some dancing in the background. So the person we've got here is in front of us, and I'm going to probably say this once tonight, maybe twice. We'll see how we go. So Sophie Anapliotis. There you go. How did I go? Was that good?
Well played.
That was amazing. Yeah. Well done.
Did a bit of practice
just
before.
Just call me Sofo.
Anyway. Sofo. Okay, I guess Sofo.
Just call me Sofo.
I kind of like it. Sophie is the director of the property management company in Geelong, or director of property management, and you've spent over a decade specializing in property management, and relationship management consulting. So I think as well, the beauty with what you've done in your journey is you've actually been in the trenches, done a couple of renovations here or there yourself. So you're not only somebody who helps manage. I liken you to almost like you've got it's like when you go to a broker and they've got a decent portfolio themselves, and you're like, it puts you at ease because you sort of know that they sort of have an ability to navigate and how to build that portfolio. And you, I suppose, you're the property manager, but you've also got if somebody needs to reno, I think you're able to. No, I think you're able to manage project manager reno for people. So
yep.
I think you go above and beyond.
So, yeah, we offer that as part of the service, and that's one of the parts that I love the most is the project management and looking at how can we make money. How can we make money? That's really what I enjoy looking at.
Yeah, and that's what I like is like you think about it from an investor's lens. It's not how can we make this thing the most beautiful, pretty thing. It's how can we functionally spend $5,000 and get X amount of return. If we spend $10,000, we're probably wasting money above that. So let's just spend $5,000. That's really a good way to look at it from an investor perspective, and it also helps the tenant, making it more functional and all that other stuff.
I think that's actually the underrated part of when you're spending money. Yes, it should sort of give an ROI, return on investment, all that sort of thing. But I think you're actually improving the living space for a tenant as well. So, and I suppose there shouldn't necessarily be over capitalizing in there. But if you can improve a kitchen or a bathroom or something like that, you're making somebody's life a little bit better for 10, 20, 30, $40 or whatever it is per week, which I think is money well spent for both parties, I think. But yeah, so we'll go dive into the first. Oh, sorry, you go, Joe. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about this land tax thing. Is that what we're going to?
Oh, yeah.
Let's just go into the detail of what exactly this land tax thing is, what it means for investors, and then we can jump into the fun stuff of talking about the Geelong market. So,
is a land tax fun, Joe? I like it. Who doesn't like land tax?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Raked over the coals. Nah. So what is it all about, Sophie? What are your views? And give us the 411. Or I think that's the way. That's an American thing, but anyway.
Yeah, look, the land tax, it's virtually a way for the government to try and get us out of what we've been put through over the last couple of years, to say the least. And what it's effectively going to mean from next year is that you'll see at least another $1,300 coming out of your pocket. That's what they're saying at the moment. And Victorian investors have been hit the hardest. There's no doubt about that. When you talk rent freezes, new regulations, compliance, the safety audits, and now announcement with land taxes, and then interest rate rises continuing to happen, it puts investors in a situation where they go, is this actually worthwhile? Short term. Long term, different story.
Yeah, but I don't understand it, because it's like the investors, because I had a look at the budget, there is nothing in there talking about supply. How are we going to increase supply? How are we going to make this, the property market is an issue for renters right now. There are more people that need a house and they can't afford it. So they are getting pushed out of the property purchasing market and pushed into the rental market. So the idea is to disincentivize the people that are creating the properties by the rentals. So all of a sudden, if I'm a renter and I've been hit with, I went from 2% interest rate to 6% interest rate to 6.5%. I'm paying 6.69, I think, at the moment. So that kind of has to get passed on. That has to go somewhere. And if I have to get out of the property market because I can't afford it anymore, that's going to be sold to an owner-occupier, which is great. But then more rental supply is taken from the market. So I don't know if incentivizing investors is the best way to do this.
And when we really look at what's happening and just looking at the Geelong market, but this can also be looked at from a regional perspective, is that the biggest demand for property at the moment is affordability. Is affordable properties. That's the issue. That's the issue that we're facing. And when we look at, so going back into 2021, I'm a data nerd, always looking at property data, what's going on in the area, all those sort of things. And I started noticing that even though the media was saying that we were in a rental crisis, I was seeing properties that were sitting on the market for 30 days, 40 days, 50 days. And I'm like, the more I started looking into it, the more I started understanding that we're not in a rental crisis, we're in an affordability crisis. And the drivers for tenants at the moment and their behaviours around what they have to do now to secure a property, such as, living together instead of living apart. But there's a lot of other things that are going on. But when we're looking at their drivers, they want to be central. They want to be close to amenities. They want to have 3-bedroom. They want it to be clean and well maintained. But they want all of this for $420 a week. And then when you look at how much it costs to buy a property, it's not sustainable in majority of the markets around Geelong. And we'll obviously go through where opportunities may be. But overall, when you're looking at the media versus what's happening behind closed doors, there's a lot of stuff to explore and unpack when it comes to that. But it really has created an unsustainable ground where landlords investors want to be able to give affordable properties, but they can't buy affordable properties because it's not affordable to buy. So it's just like this never-ending loop, which is hurting everyone.
See, you could just have a whole session on this, because I suppose for the first time, or the newer investors, it's hard to sort of justify outlaying or sort of getting involved if you're not, like, people say yes, cash flow is important, and I'm not saying cash flow isn't. But ultimately, a lot of people want to see, or not a lot, but people also want to see capital growth. So, if you can't continue to hold the property as a newer investor, particularly with all these sort of extra things, then you're not going to be able to see the capital growth. But then to get in, so it's an interesting one, because I don't know, like how does the investor starting now sort of justify, like if you're buying a 500 or 600K property, is it to get to $1.2 million, then the rent, what's the rent going to be on that? It's going to be like $700 or $850 a week maybe. And then the rental crisis, affordability crisis doesn't get better. So it's an interesting one, because there's, what happens there? Or how does that work? Bigger questions.
Yeah. And we can definitely do a whole session on that, because there's so much going on in that space. But the one thing that, when it comes to the land tax, when I was listening to everything and reading into it today, there was a comment by one of the commentators saying that the government has learnt nothing. And I think that was probably the biggest learning, is that they're putting a lot of stress on investors, even though that as investors we could be helping as well.
Yeah.
So
I'd even go as far to say the governments, not just any particular, like even the other side of the equation, like the federal government that lost the election, so Liberal, they were sort of proposing people get money out of super or something like that. I don't know if that was something like that. And I was like, well, I don't know. Does that actually solve the problem? Like, are you just kind of kicking the can a little bit further down the road? So I don't think there's a lot of actionable or realistic solutions out there, but just interesting.
Anyway. Yeah. My thought is over COVID, we spent way too much money, and we had a credit card as a country, and we just tapped away, and we got up billions of dollars of debt, and we have to pay it back somehow. So imagine being a government being like, well, where do we get this money from? They have to come up with somewhere, and it's going to suck. It's going to suck for everyone for a number of years, I think, from paying this debt off. Otherwise, we go in too deep. We keep plugging away. That feels good. Keep credit carding it, but it has to come back soon. So
there's a reason it's called fiat, though, Joe. Fiat currency. It's fake.
Yeah,
it's not
a very good car anyway. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We don't want to talk about this $1,500, because it is only $1,500. At the end of the day, what is this all talking about? $1,500, and it is going to be passed on. You are going to have to increase your rents. It's just not good policy, in my opinion. But anyway, I want to understand the Geelong market. So maybe can we start like super like macro, like just start at the top and work our way in? Or how do you kind of think about, like, why is Geelong so great? Maybe that's
why is Geelong so amazing? The biggest, there was definitely a boom that happened over the COVID period, and a lot of people started seeing, the way that I see it is that Geelong has always had a lot of potential, but it was seen as the ugly cousin to Melbourne for quite some time. It was just, everyone thought that it was just country bumpkin town, no one, no infrastructure, nothing's really happening down here. And then all of a sudden, when people started looking at how to make things more efficient, affordable, then they realized that Geelong is not even an hour away from Melbourne, and you're surrounded by beaches, you've got the surf coast, you've got the best wineries. There's so much happening down in Geelong that was really untapped. And then when the lifestyle changes started happening outside of Sydney, Melbourne, all those sort of things, that's when Geelong was like, oh, this is actually a really great place to live. You can sell your property for 1.2, 1.3, or even up to 3 mil in Melbourne, and then you can get something for a fraction of the price down in Geelong, and you have a most amazing lifestyle, and you can catch a train and you're back in Melbourne within 45 minutes to an hour. So I think that was, we sort of came out a little bit as wow, this is actually a really cool place to be from a lifestyle perspective. But then when we look at Geelong as a whole, it's quite a big area, and a big area to navigate when you're looking at it from an investor and where to live, because you've got Geelong CBD and 5 to 10 kilometres out, and then you've got the surf coast. You've got Torquay, Jan Juc, all the way out to Lorne. Then you've got the Bellarine Peninsula as well, like Drysdale, Clifton Springs, Port Arlington, that has the ferry that goes over to Sorrento. You've got the Surf Coast Shire as well, which is another growing area, which is Bannockburn, Teesdale, and that hasn't really been talked about for some time. But the areas that will probably focus on a little bit tonight will probably be the central areas, because when we're looking at the drivers for renters, that's what they're looking for at the moment. And if we start looking outwards, the vacancy rates are actually increasing further than we go out. So there's 5% vacancies in some areas at the moment.
Wow.
Could you bring the map up, Joe? We're just about to do that. Because I'm a visual. Like if you're listening to our Spotify or whatever, I think we're on Apple as well. I don't think we discriminate on podcast apps, so we don't discriminate either. But jump over onto YouTube, because there's going to be a few. Are you sharing? Do you want me to share my? Joe's better at doing the share screen though. He definitely is better at navigating the map.
So for those that don't know, Geelong is this little pocket down here, 45 minutes to an hour's drive. For those that have just recently joined, we are doing our first ever live event in Geelong on the 14th of June, and you guys can join it. Called Thinking Outside the Box. We're going to have 6 speakers for the night. It is $30. I know, an event that costs $30. What are we doing? All the money, all the proceeds go to a charity called Friends in Me. So we are wanting to run our first ever live event with the help of Sophie. So if you guys want to be a part of it, it would be awesome to see you there, and we can all have a beer together.
How many tickets are left though, Joe? Like, Sophie, you check.
There's some left. There are some left. We haven't sold out just yet, but it's
just book it. We'll sort it out.
Yeah, book it. Yeah, exactly. Book it, and they will come. I'll post this in the little thing there. I guess some of the reasons why I like Geelong is there's $5.5 billion of infrastructure projects going in. Like this right here is Avalon Airport. It's what 15-minute drive to get into the city there. They've got a massive Armstrong Creek project going on. $4 billion Geelong fast rail. So this is going to be like Wollongong, but like Sydney has Wollongong, Melbourne has Geelong. And what's the median price for Wollongong nowadays, Jeff?
Oh, mate, where in Wollongong are you talking? Like, you're talking up Austinmere way, mate. Austinmere, you need several $1 million to buy up there. And even kind of Coaldale and all those sort of places. But in the southern suburbs, you can pick up a median to be between sort of 800 to probably 1.1. So yeah, it's not as affordable as the more affordable parts of Geelong by any stretch of the imagination. And rents have probably rental yields are a little lower as well. Surprisingly, so where are we limiting? Are we in our discussion of Geelong? Because I know there's the people who talk about the Lara area and even down to sort of, I'm just looking at that. So Armstrong Creek. I think there's a lot of land in those places.
There is.
Should we?
Armstrong Creek was it is the growth corridor. And the new growth corridor that is now starting to develop is Lara. So you're honing in on Armstrong Creek first.
Yeah. And one thing I just think is worthwhile to mention for something that's called a growth corridor, it means there's going to be a lot of houses that are going to go there. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a large amount of capital growth, because all these houses have just been built, and you can see literally they've cut it off based on the suburbs. So the suburb geographic boundaries are this, and this, and they've built the houses based on this. But if you buy a house in here, there's going to be 1,000 houses exactly the same. And then over here, when the supply and the demand gets built up enough, they're just going to release more land and they're going to put more houses. So I feel that I know based on the data that these type of areas may not be not better than looking at some of the more closer in locations for infill.
Well, Jordan De Jong, we unpacked in that live session probably 6 weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago. He actually explained why house and lands in those kind of you may see short-term growth, but over time it'll just stagnate because they'll release new ones and at roughly the same sort of prices. So they'll sort of, in the first stage, it may appear like you're making some money, but then the second ones will get released at roughly the same price. And why would somebody pay any more for your 2 or 3 or 5-year-old property when they can buy a brand new one for the same price that yours is now sort of worth or selling for?
Yeah. And then same goes for Lara. I mean, there's a lot of really nice houses up in Lara, to be fair, with a lot of land. So like a land themselves on large blocks. But that's a growth.
What are your thoughts on these areas anyway,
Sophie? Yeah.
What are my thoughts on the area? So there's been a lot of interest in the Armstrong Creek area from an investor point of view. When the construction costs started going up, it then started not making sense because, yes, the rent was increasing, but relative to the cost of the construction to complete it and now to buy in to the areas, it wasn't really making sense to new investors coming into the area. And it was now being more common for them to purchase something that's already existing because it's a more stable way. And instead of waiting for, which builder's going to go down next, and there's been a lot of stuff going on around there as well. But the vacancy rates in Armstrong Creek, and that fluctuates on supply and demand. You've got heaps of properties that come up at the same time, goes up, and then it comes back down, and that's just how new house and land growth corridors are like. Armstrong Creek has remained relatively low, and even during this time of the year, it usually goes up to about that 3%, but it has stayed around that 2 or lower. So it's still performing better than what it has previously. But I'm, as an investor, taking property manager hat off, I'm always look at the supply and demand side of growth corridors. And
So how should we think about Geelong as from a geographical boundary? How do we think about how do you picture it in your mind, I guess? Because I always like to go into an area and I just see, there's water here, but there's not many houses. So that must be where, is this the main area? How do you kind of paint? It looks like it's very much decided by the M1 that's driving around it. How do you think about it as a whole to kind of encapsulate the area?
Well, the conversation we're having now is going to be different in 10 years' time because of the amount of development that's happening in the northern suburbs. So if you hone in on the Lara area and the northern suburbs that there is becoming the next growth corridor, which is going to connect in with the current northern suburbs. And Lara is now more of a inner Geelong, within 15, 20 minutes of there. But then there's also development that's happening next to Batesford as well in that area. And the more and more now Geelong is starting to expand out, and we've got areas like Golden Plains Shire that is now becoming you can live in Geelong. That's the place that we've just invested in. We invested in Golden Plains Shire because we could see that the growth opportunities over the next 10 to 15 years are going to be insane as more people are looking for lifestyle and things like that.
Did you buy some decent sort of land in Golden Plains? Did you?
We did, yeah. So the first property that we bought, it was in Highton. And it was I call it trash to treasure investing. So we bought trash, but it was great location, good land, ticked all the boxes, but it needed a lot of love. And we renovated it and just worked on time. So we have that for 8 years now. And we bought that. Do you want me to, I don't know if you want me to go into details and share stuff of what we did there, but
no, that sounds cool. Tell us obviously don't share the address, but tell us the
well, we
the brief. What did you do?
Pretty much we renovated it, and we bought it for 365.
Yeah.
And we are now, the last valuation that we had on it was 1.25.
Wow. What did you do to the property as well? What sort of reno? Is it a full reno?
Full reno, full indoor, inside and out. You wouldn't even recognize it. it's
Ooh.
yeah, really.
How much did you
really
spend on the reno? Obviously you can't factor in the labor that you would have paid if you didn't do it. A lot of it, the work yourself, but like from a cash perspective over those 8 years,
about 280 to 300.
300K on the reno.
Bloody hell.
Over time, yeah.
That's a huge reno. Did you build a small temple at the meditation room or something? That sounds. I'm just thinking, what would I spend 300K on a reno? Did you add extra rooms?
Yeah, we did add add extra rooms. We did a lot of external stuff, repainted, put a outdoor area. Put a lot of stuff into the backyard as well. So we ended up going, right, what is the heightened market? What do people want if they're going to be going into heightened? So it wasn't just gold-plated taps. Yes, that was definitely part of it. We went, if we're going to do this and if we're going to make this ugly duckling great, then we're going to put our time and energy into it. So like even just going as far as putting the, under sprinklers and all timed and and all that sort of thing. And yeah, so, and because it's 500 square meters 500 meters from Heighton Village, walking distance, we knew what it was going to, what it could possibly be. So we went, you know what, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. But we ended up getting someone in the final stages because we did a lot of groundwork, but we didn't have we kept going around in circles. How do we do the stairs? How do we do this? And then we just got someone external in to go, right, just do this. Like I wanted to put in spiral stairs from the beginning. And my partner renovating, they were like, no, spiral stairs, it's done, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing that the renovators said when we came in, they're like, we're putting reverse spiral stairs in. And I'm like, I told you, like we spent like 3 years, like, just going around in circles about this. And then it was just done. So it was really important, I guess, for us at the end to, because there was a lot of complexities with it. It's a 1955 home. So we got someone in who had done those sort of things before. So a bit of that cost went into the labor of getting professionals in to finish that out. Yeah. But and because of and we ended up now leveraging off that. And then we bought 13.5 acre farmhouse it was like 30 minutes from Geelong. And we're renovating that one at the moment.
Yeah, that's unreal. So what were the signs that you were looking out for when you purchased that thing at 365,000? What did you see that no one else saw that told you that this was going to be a $1.25 million property? What was it?
It was all about location for one, and it was the fact that it was trash. Like when we went in, and we knew that we had a budget of what we want to spend, and we knew that we wanted to be in the 3216 area, but we thought it was going to be more Grovedale, Belmont at that time. But the only thing that was going for us is that this house from the outside looked amazing, but when you walked in, all you saw was problems. But I'm very solutions focused. So when I walked in, I went, right, what are the things behind the closed doors that people aren't looking at when they come in and just see the trash? And there was, reverse cycle unit that had just been put in for $10,000. They'd put a 5-bay garage at 4 meters high recently. There were there were a lot of little things that they'd put in, but people straight away were coming in going, nah, too much. And I was probably a little bit naive. I was 23 when bought it as well, and I was like, yeah, we can do this. It was a lot more than what we could chew. Like if you were to do it as just a quick flip, unless you had a lot of money to be able to do it. But we just did it slowly over time. And Unreal. We learned a lot of things. Yeah, learned a lot of things, made a lot of mistakes, as you do, which probably added into the costings of stuff as well, while we ended up getting someone in to help out with the final stages. But when we were looking at our next reno, we were looking at simplicity of the build, like of the actual build itself, which is 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, what other little insights did you learn that you took from that one? Because that sounds like you saw this amazing thing that had potential for spiral staircases, and you did well out of it. But it's like maybe that's not the quickest way to do these things. What else?
Oh yeah, 100%. When we were looking at our next reno, I went 18 months to 2 years tops. Like I'm not going through a 6 to 7 year reno again. Yes, it's paid off, but time is also money as well. Like there was this one point where we were like, do we finish off the renovation for the house, or do we put the money that we have in equity into buying another investment property? And we had to make the choice to put that money into the property, which is now paid off, but that stopped us from being able to build our portfolio quicker because we had such a large project. So there's a lot of those extra little things that were sort of conflicts at the time between, do I just put it all into one basket, or do we not put it all into one basket? So now that it's done, we've had renters in there now, and we've just decided to put it on the market and to sell it. We took buyers through this week, and it's purely because it's done its thing. It's been great. Great experience, but now it's time to re-strategize our investment portfolio. So now we're going to, instead of having all of our eggs in one or two baskets, we're now going to, look at more cash flow positive properties and buying in at a lower,
So
lower.
well, I mean,
we're pretty much just starting the cycle again.
Yeah. So you so does that mean it's tax free because it was your PPOR?
It is now an investment property for the last 12 months.
And they factor that in.
But yeah.
Not financial advice, Joe, but generally you've got, as long as there's no other PPOR, so there's a 6-year rule kind of situation going on. So, but as always, people should speak to the ATO and or their accountant to understand. Oh yeah, I just talk to my accountant because I don't know. The ATO is just a pain in the backside to talk to. Like, you got to go to 15 call, get transferred 10 times, and stay on hold.
So okay, so what I found interesting is you told me there's a $1.2 million property in Geelong, but there's also super affordable pockets in Geelong as well.
Let's walk through the rest of Geelong in the inner sanctum of Geelong. What does it look like?
Cool. So when we're looking at within, say, Geelong and 10Ks, the popular areas that generally get looked at are 3216. So we're looking at Belmont, Highton, Grovedale, Marshall. Well, Marshall's now going into, it's still 3216. But that's been the most popular area. And then we look at Newtown, which is more like upmarket, higher end. And then Geelong West, going into the northern suburbs of North Geelong. And then you start going to Corio and Norlane from there. And then you got Bell Park. But what's been really interesting is that even though 3216 or Highton, Belmont, that area, there's still opportunities in there to buy, don't get me wrong, but the yields aren't necessarily making as much sense as what some other areas might be at the moment. But if you're looking for something that's long-term, you know that it's going to attract great renters, relatively good rent is going to be returned out of it as well. And then also the capital gains and the land value out of it. That's where 3216 has sort of been the safety net, I guess, for a lot of investors, because they know that it's stable, and it's a bit of a set and forget sort of thing. And then Geelong West, so going into the north, going up towards sort of Corio, Norlane, Lara area.
So what you were talking about here. So this map here is on Microburbs, which is for affluent score, and I think it actually cuts up Norlane quite nicely into like the pockets to understand. So what you were talking about here, Highton, this is the kind of, the nicer pockets, right? So the the good looking areas where there's a lot of higher value properties are up here and up in here. Here is Geelong City and town. And then now we're going to some of the more affordable pockets up north, up in here.
Yeah. And then you've got the other side as well, which will, so right now you're heading up into Lara, Norlane, Cryo, that sort of thing. Yeah. But what was really interesting over the last couple of years is that when people couldn't afford to get into Highton or Newtown, those areas, they then started looking at Geelong West. And Geelong West almost became like a little Fitzroy. Like everyone wanted to be in Geelong West. It was cool. You had Packington Street. You could walk to Geelong CBD. It was really great. But now to get into there, you're looking at about 700 just to get an entry level. So the yields don't really make sense anymore. But then it started flowing on to North Geelong. And 18 months ago, I was looking at North Geelong, Bell Park and Bell Post Hill as the areas that would continue to grow because of people that couldn't afford to get into the Geelong West market. And they performed quite well. And now they're starting to, now like they started off in the sort of like 450 to 5, and now they've headed up into the sixes as well. So,
well into the sixes. Like this, Hamlin Heights, Bell Post Hill. There you can see there's is it the train line? There's like a geographical bound. Yeah, there's a geographical. There's a geographical bounds that really changes the structure. Like all of these houses along here, there's a really nice university. There's a whole heap of value up in Bell Post Hill and Bell Park and Hamlin Heights. Like really, really nice area to drive through. I feel like if you go there, this is nice. And then we get a little bit more affordable up in our what would you consider? Well, you know what it is, but
the 3214 area, is that what you're referring to? So you've got, and then you have Corio and Norlane, which the prices had gone up a fair bit, and then they came back down a little bit as well. So it has softened a little bit. But if we look at where it was 10 years ago to where it is now, there's been quite good growth. And Joe, you'll know that as well, knowing the Geelong market well. So you can still buy into this area for about $450K. And the vacancy has remained really, really low because we talked about earlier that affordability is the biggest key at the moment. So 3214 vacancy is still sitting at 0.7%. And to get a 3-bed, 1-bath property that's been slightly updated, clean condition, you can get 370 to 400 per week. And if you're getting that at that 450 range, then that's still a gross yield of 4.3 going into the 4.3 range. So there's still definitely opportunity there that's happening in that market.
I'd say that's probably
370 times
probably need to pay 420.
So in terms of like quality of tenant, because if we have a look at the affluence score, which none of this stuff is a hard science, obviously there's pockets within pockets. How much does it shift, and how are you finding actual tenants and rentals in some of these more affordable pockets? Because if you had, let's actually talk to it. If you had 400,000 to 450,000, where would you be putting that money if you had to invest in the Geelong market? Or what do you have no choice but to invest in at that price range?
Yeah. So if you're looking at, and I'm not talking units, townhouses, things like that. I'm just 3-bed land, all that sort of thing. Because there's a lot of other opportunities. Like there was an investor that recently bought one for $275.
What's that?
And no, that's the thing. It was a block of units, and the vendor had decided to subdivide them and make them into individual titled properties before they They sold it, and then they sold them for about $275, and then the rent that we're getting on them is about $275 a week as well. So there's definitely those opportunities if you have a smaller budget and if that works for you. But for the purpose of tonight, land, looking at that as well. So I would, so the real key areas that have that is obviously the Cryo and Nor Lane area that we just talked about, and then also the other side of Geelong going towards more the coast. So if you go down and then to that way a little bit, so in that little pocket there's Breakwater, Thompson, Newcomb, Whittington, the 3219 area.
What's it like down here? Is this more industrial? Is it more owner occupiers? Is it more family? Like what's kind of people are sit here?
Depends which little pocket you go into. So we've got Moolat, which is more industrial. We have Newcomb, which is a larger like family area. Whittington was originally same as Cryo and Nor Lane, which was primarily social housing, which is now a mix between the two. It's starting to gentrify those two areas. And then you also have East Geelong. So East Geelong is quite a tight pocket to get into, and the owner occupier to renter is about the 30%, 70% owner occupier. Last time I looked at the stats. So there's definitely the little pockets within pockets when you're looking at suburbs, because our suburbs actually range to be quite big, and there's a couple of suburbs within that. So even just looking at 3219, you've got, Whittington, Breakwater and Newcomb, which you can get into, or even Thompson as well, which you can get into at that like 450 to 485 range. And then you can get yields of about that 4.5 to 5%, depending on what you're looking at. But then you've got Newcomb, and you can still find properties in that 450 range, but a lot of work needs to be done. If you want something that's already done in Newcomb, then you're going into the 500s. So there's definitely pockets within pockets.
I like that good where there's sort of disparity, because I suppose as long as you're willing to do some work, if you want the finished product, then if you, as Steve McKnight sort of says, Joe, you buy problem, sell solution. So if you're buying the solution, then you're going to pay more for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no value add on top of that. Anyone who has any questions about Geelong or about the area, throw them in the comments, and we can kind of touch
Should we go for a couple now, Joe? I've already started a couple. This is maybe a bit tongue in cheek from Aaron. He said, "Is this infrastructure spending actually happening? Like, have you got that infrastructure going?"
Depends what council or government you ask.
Yeah. Is that infrastructure gov?
It's a loaded question, and that's probably a whole other session within itself. But there have been upgrades that have been happening around the area. Yeah, a lot of it has gone into. A lot of it's gone into, and it has cut back now a bit, but it went into the creative and arts and things like that for a little bit. A lot of focus went into building the council building as well. And there's a lot of apartments that are being built within Geelong CBD as well. And then surrounding that, you've got the Spirit of Tassie that's just come in. So they did a lot of infrastructure work around that to make that happen. And then you've also got connecting Melbourne to the Bellarine Peninsula as well. So Port Phillip Ferries runs through that as well. So connecting Geelong and Melbourne has definitely been a focus. Yeah.
Also, they spent, this is not that recent. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago, but they spent that sort of, how much they spent on GmbH? I don't know. Yeah, that's that Geelong. Panini Park used to be.
Cats.
What they used. Yeah, it's a bit of memories, because they absolutely belted the Swans in the grand final last year, and again this year by 90-odd points. But anyway, we won't talk about that. But they spent several $100 million on that, didn't they? The redevelopment of that, which was great. But the interesting thing, Joe, is when we I suppose how long. Like, I know Simon Presley talked about sporting stadiums as indicators, but they don't really create that many jobs, though, do they, Joe?
No, I think some of the interesting ones are like the ferry, the Spirit of Tasmania is a bit of an interesting one. Access to the city via the fast rail. They're some of the ones to look out for, where they're actually adding, ease of use and more people with money to be able to commute. Like I live in Cronulla in New South Wales, and to get into the city, it takes me 50 minutes on a train, and that's not a problem for me because, it's only 50 minutes, and I commute to the city all the time, so it's absolutely fine. So it's like as long as you kind of keep it within that 50-minute, an hour mark, as long as you can speed that up, more people are going to be more interested to be able to do it.
Yeah, and that kind of talks this one back to the office. I saw earlier this week. Last week, NAB, my former employer, was getting people back in the office, and CBA I see this week as well talking about getting people back in the office, which is just interesting because I don't know. I think people are probably generally more productive from home, but yeah. Anyway, I suppose old line of thinking.
And one of the trends that we've seen is that even if it's a couple, no kids, they will look for a 3-bedroom now because they want that extra space for an office, or they've got a side hustle that they, either do podcasting or something like that. So the flexibility of working from home has definitely changed the way that people look at things as well. But there are more people that are now deciding to commute again, which when they look at Geelong, they go, okay, well, let's look at going into the northern suburbs like North Geelong, because then I can just get straight onto the freeway and then I'm good to go. I'm there in 50 minutes or an hour and we're all good. Like we were helping a family relocate, and they were specifically looking at anywhere that was close to the freeway that they could go, because even though they wanted to move back down to Geelong for family, he still had to commute back to Melbourne 2 to 3 days a week. So they wanted to make sure that it was going to be a convenient drive. So there is still that real connect between Geelong and Melbourne now, and there's a lot of that exchange that still happens even if we're going back to work.
And I want to ask this question as well. We're sort of jumping around a little bit here, but I think this one's interesting. What do you reckon of Karaya for developing? I'll throw this one to Joe first, and then, Sophie. I reckon you both have heaps of great input, but what do you think, Joe? About
do you want to go with that, Joe?
Karaya?
Well,
you're the Karaya King.
Oh, I don't know about Karaya King.
They make a Netflix series about you. The last the
last Karaya King. Yeah, I think there's infill. Like if you can do some infill, but there's so many pockets within Karaya that you just do not want to be in my opinion. So you just need to be very, very particular about where you're going. There is some space where developing can happen, and they're still cutting up little plots. As long as you kind of like it's over this side of the road, over the Princess Highway. It's a complete freeway. It's a different world. So yeah, I think if you can choose land that works for you in a good little pocket, yeah, absolutely. If the numbers stack
and
up.
it's I don't think it's a case of build it and they will come kind of thing, because as Joe said, I think there's definitely kind of pockets where if you build a product that you've overcapitalized and built something sort of even medium or high spec, and then like it's just sort of, are you spending way too much in that particular pocket? So it's where you lean on people like Sophie, people who are in this market day in, day out and understand the pockets.
And I'm really seeing the opportunity here in the northern suburbs. So, for example, we've had Barwon Health that have moved from Geelong CBD out into North Geelong, or it's actually Norlane, that they've moved into. And around that area, there's also like LeisureLink have also gone there as well. And then around certain pockets within Norlane, North Geelong, that are sort of closer to the highway, close proximity to CBD, there have been townhouse developments that have performed pretty well, like from a occupancy side of things.
What's the new building that's around this area here? Isn't there? Is that what you were talking?
Where am I looking? My eyes are not that good.
Princess Highway, in Nor Lane, opposite the old factory.
Are we looking at the Bunnings?
Yeah, around Bunnings. It was a big development. I drove past, and it was like a health clinic or something. Okay, that was that. Okay, because that's massive.
Yeah. It's interesting that because probably 7 or 8 years ago, it could be longer, but there was the Ford factory closure and Target got out of Target head office moved from Geelong as well. And it sort of sounded like there was a lot of negativity and a bit of a death knell around Geelong, but I think it became a lot more resilient. It's because health kind of moved a bit to Geelong and what
medical, yeah. So it's very big. So we've got Epworth down here. We've got a lot of healthcare stuff has gone into Geelong. So we're outside of the era where Ford and manufacturing cars and things like that were the focus, and Alcoa as well had come down as well. But it was just an end of an era of what Geelong was, and now Geelong is just going into a new era, which comes with other opportunities and other needs as well. So the amount of people that are moving down because the amount of nurses and doctors and specialists that are needed in Geelong is becoming really, really high demand. And we've also got the NDIS space is really growing in the Geelong region as well.
Yeah. And then obviously you've got Deakin University. That employs 1,500 people by the waterfront. Well, and then you've got 7,000 people for Barwon Health. I just think there's so much potential.
Like WorkSafe is down in Geelong. Energy Australia is now down in Geelong as well. They moved down from Melbourne, and they're now.
And in the next 18 years, so I'm just reading about this is on ID or forecast.id. It's saying the city of Greater Geelong, it's forecast to grow from 282 to 396,000 in 18 years.
And we haven't even touched on the Com Games either.
Ah, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Or did Geelong get the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah.
Well, I think they're spending $650 million to get that facility up and running. So what is it? Can you tell us a little bit about that, or is it just as easy as that?
It's just as easy as that. Yeah, there's no point going into it that much. But one of the biggest things that I've seen is that there's a lot of construction already developing and money going into Geelong to get ready, and the short-term accommodation market has been really quite good for that reason as well. Like we've got majority of our income for our short-term accommodation comes from construction workers that have come from interstate or Melbourne or others, from all different areas because of the amount of work that's being done in Geelong.
Wow. So what about the negatives though? What are we sort of seeing? Because I feel like Geelong's very positive, which I love. I love positivity.
Yeah. What are the negatives?
One of the biggest negatives for me is the rental yield. It is not a high rental yield. So like, you know, I've been buying in Western Australia and South Australia, and a 5% yield is the minimum standard of what you're getting for your money. Right now,
even
Geelong
Queensland to some extent as well. Like maybe depending on where in Queensland, but yeah.
Very true. Very true. So like if I've got, you know, if I need a cash cow, like not a cash cow, but if I have, you know, $1,000 to have as my kitty every single month, I save that amount of money. And then when I buy a property, it takes half of that or 3/4 of that. I'm not really saving for my next deposit to go for the next one. So I'm going to look for a property in a location that's going to give me those yields. And why are the yields so low? Because they're, I don't know. I don't want to say they're incredibly low, but they are incredibly low.
The average. Yeah, but Geelong has never really been known for its yields. If we look at it, it's like the yields don't really make that much sense. There have been times where, we're looking at 3219, you can get a gross yield of 4.97 depending on what sort of deal you're looking at, which is pretty good. It's getting there. But most suburbs don't perform like that. The biggest, I guess, positive, going back to positives, is that it's more about the long term. With I know that Joe has shared his story about how much capital that you've ended up gaining as a result of it, which has been more of a long-term thing, but your yields or the rental return isn't necessarily making sense, but the price that you bought into it, like, relatively works out.
You bought mid-twos, didn't you, Joe? Was it mid-twos?
Oh, yeah, I bought in Geelong for 280. Yeah, I bought in Nor Lane. So Nor Lane is that little northern suburbs up in here. Actually bought right opposite the Bunnings. So when I was doing my renovation, it was super useful. I paid $280,000. The site is subdividable 1 into 2. You can probably see it somewhere along here, wherever the heck I am.
Yeah, I remember on live, Joe. You once there was you tried to hide the address, but you could see the address. I was like, Joe, just get rid of that damn address.
Get rid of the address. So you can see there are pockets getting chewed up, but the area that the pocket that I'm buying on is anyway. I bought it for $280,000. We did a renovation that cost $22,000, and it was then revalued at $360,000. So that's great, right? This is the reason why you need to add value to your property, because then I just got the majority of my deposit back, which then allowed me to go for the next one. So great, do value add strategies, but there is also holding it. Like, holding in a good location works. It got from $360,000 to $550,000 in 2 years. So that property now, with the renovation, is worth $550,000, which I can go use and do whatever I want. So it's kind of like I do think there's super duper value in. I think there's value in value add, but then it's like, just choose a good location that where the numbers stack up, and where there's desirability, infrastructure. And then you can ride that capital growth wave.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, though, Sophie, but what you're probably getting at is, over time, the yields based on purchase price will improve.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And even just looking at the last 10 years, the value of a property has continued to go up pretty much in every suburb across Geelong. So the numbers, when looking at the data and the number of people playing the long-term game, and they're looking for an area where they know that it's going to attract renters, the vacancy rates aren't going to be, you're not going to be losing money on the property sitting there vacant for too long. It's been a good, safe bet as part of someone's strategy to have that stability and that slow growth over a longer period of time. But of course, if you're looking for something that's just straight up, just cash flow positive, then Geelong's does have its drawbacks in that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So have you had, are there many sort of horror rental stories in your time as property manager? Like, maybe one or two, but hopefully not too many. But what should things be looking out for when they're becoming a landlord in Geelong? Like, what sort of things do they need to be aware of that may not be elsewhere? Apart from the yields,
that may not be elsewhere. Yeah.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, it's a broad question. Look, I'm very lucky in a sense where, even when the last couple of years with rent freezes and renters, stop paying rent and going to VCAT and all that sort of thing, I haven't had to go. I haven't had to go to VCAT. We didn't have any rent freezes, didn't have to do any rent reductions. So even though there's been a lot of hurt that's sort of happened to investors over the last couple of years, the relationships that we've built with both of our landlords and tenants have been really good, and we've just got a really good vetting process. So when we are processing applications, I don't do the celebration of, we've leased it in one day and all that sort of thing, because if we have applications come in and they're not going to be suitable and they're not going to be long term, then the last thing that I want is to put them in for the short term and then realize that they're not the right fit, and then they have to leave in 6 or 12 months' time, and then spending more money on letting fees. And the way that I say it is, it's my job to make sure that you don't have to pay me every 12 months to find you another tenant. Like, I want long-term tenants. So I guess it's more just the vetting process. And no matter what area you're in, you're always going to deal with, different levels of affluence, the socioeconomic side of it. But overall, it just comes down to the way that you read people, the accountability that you give them about their responsibilities of being a renter as well. And to be honest, I'm actually quite lucky. Like, yeah, I could tell you some horror stories, but that's probably, stories for another time. But
over a beer or wine, perhaps, or a
maybe in our session next week where everyone's coming.
Segue.
Here's the link. Here's the link again, guys. Sign up to it. Join us.
Somebody buy Joe a cardboard cutout of me, so he doesn't get too lonely.
He's not alone. I'm interested. So let's just, not pretend. There are people out there that haven't invested in Victoria. Was it last year? No, a couple of years ago now, actually. There was new tenancy rules that have come in. So in other pockets in South Australia, in WA, loosey-goosey. The rules are very much sided with the owner, the landlord. Victoria's not as clean-cut. It's very much tenant-focused. So can you give us a bit of a run-through of what legislation came in now and what it means and how someone should approach investing in Victoria?
So if we look at it over a long term and what's been happening, the changes they weren't really a shock to me. And the way that I see it is that there was a scale of, I'm the landlord, you're the tenant. Like, that was sort of happening for quite some time. And then I believe that this was the governmental, their way of trying to balance it. But now it's gone the other way. And but what I've seen is that it's like, how's the best way to, trying to think of the most diplomatic way to say this. That's the best way to explain it.
Are tenants protected species? Is that what we're saying?
I think that it's swung. I think it swung that way because there were a lot of things that should have been done over time that weren't done, such as doing property maintenance, taking care of the property, mold in
rent
properties.
Increases as well.
That too. And that was Victoria's way of trying to go, no, we're going to protect the tenants and make sure that they don't have to live in these standards. And really, it's this, like, it probably only makes about 10% of what's actually happening in the real world. But, one of the biggest things was pets. Like, there was this whole thing that came out about pets, and tenants are allowed to have pets and all that sort of thing. But that was on the media. But when you look at the way that it actually reads, the tenant still needs to ask for a pet, but now the owner can't reasonably refuse. But the way that it's been put on the media is that, oh no, tenants are just allowed to have pets and we're going to have pets in the properties and all that sort of thing. No, there's still a pet clause. There's still things that they have to do, and there's still, like when they go to vacate, there's still responsibilities that they have to maintain the property if there's damages and all those sort of things as well. But that change started happening about 6 or 7 years prior to that happening, because there was a case that came out that the landlord was saying, well, no, I don't want the pet in my property, but then the tenant argued that they have a human right to have a pet, and the Human Rights Act is well above the Residential Tenancies Act. And they won the case. But so this is something that's been happening over time as people's love for pets and they're their babies now and all those sort of things. It's been their way of trying to balance it out and go, no, you have a right to have a pet, but it doesn't mean that the tenants still don't have accountability and responsibility to make sure that they're doing the right things.
Yeah. So what are some of the other dot points of these, what these new changes are? So pets allow pets for, pretty much any reason. That's one of them.
Yeah. And then you've got the rent increases, and now can only be done every 12 months rather than 6 months.
So that's big.
The notice to vacate for no reason, so that doesn't exist anymore. You can't give a 120-day no notice anymore, and then the 90-day notice can only happen at the end of the first fixed term lease, and then after so
we can say, hey, you can leave now in 90 days, but not for any reason. It has to have a reason.
So it's just end of fixed term lease, 90 days. But then if you decide to renew a lease for another 12 months, then that doesn't exist anymore. You can't give them another 90-day notice because they're end of fixed lease.
Wow.
So it's
So you'd have a tenant in theory that's fantastic the first 12 months or whatever the term lease, and then the second they could, it wouldn't usually happen, but they could become sort of nightmare tenants, and then you can't then say, oh well, your lease is up, we're going to move you on.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about painting walls? What's the go with that? Now I heard that the tenant can paint the wall whatever color they want.
Yeah, they can.
I don't really like black as a color. I want my walls to be white.
But they can, but they still need to rectify it at the end of the tenancy, unless it's been approved by the owner. So
okay, but then this is $800 white here for just this wall alone. They then paint $20 blue over the top, and then they paint $50 white over the top again. How is that putting it back? That's where it gets these gray areas of, I don't know if that's a good idea. I think
exactly.
How do you say that? No, they take a photo. That's fully painted. No, it's rubbish. You've gotten a spray can and painted it white. That's not the same thing. It's interesting.
And to be honest, since these changes have come out, I haven't had a tenant go, hey, I'm going to paint this green, and there's nothing you can do about it. I've walked in every 6 months, the walls have still been the same color. So
you're too cynical, Joe. Yeah. Most people aren't laying awake at night thinking, oh crap, what can I do to this house to make my landlord's life a nightmare? And if I'd be concerned if Joe comes up to I'm sure Joe would be a great tenant.
And
pay the
definitely
bill, pay the bill.
the tenants definitely do have a lot of rights compared to what they had previously. But I don't really see it as a negative because, like I said from the beginning, it's about having a relationship with them and a conversation with them about their rights and responsibilities. And if they're treated like it's their home, if they're treated with that they feel valued, they feel respected, they can have a conversation, it generally doesn't become that much of a problem.
And what about compliance? What are some of the things? We just bought an investment property. It was previously an owner-occupier. They didn't care about anything. They just left, 60, 50 years old or whatever it is. What are some of the compliance things that we need to think about?
Yeah, so there's the safety audit, which needs to be done, checking smoke alarms every 12 months, and then the gas appliances and the electrical appliances every 2 years. That first came in 2021, and then in 2023, it then took it a step further, and now all switchboards need to meet a minimum requirement for RCDs to have the residual current devices in there as well. So that's definitely another cost that we look at. And that's why I always, before looking at a property for an investor, I always look at switchboards. I know what to look for now. I'm not an electrician, but I've seen enough of them now to be able to factor in what those costs are.
Yeah. And in Queensland they have requirements around like your smoke alarm must be set up in this way to the new legislation. But when you're buying it, that's not the case, is it? It's just you're buying it as is, and your job as a new owner is to put those things. So it's not the vendor's responsibility to fix those things. It's your responsibility.
Yeah. Unless, and it's always good to know it's always good to factor in those costs beforehand to make sure that it's not going to blow over go eat into your cost too much. It definitely needs to be taken into consideration when you're putting the numbers together.
So how much is it to do those? Like let's say there's no compliance whatsoever in a property, like no RCDs, none of that stuff. What would we be adding to our cost?
Standard switchboard, if you have to do a full switchboard upgrade, it's been around that $1,100 to $1,300, depending on the complexity. And if it's just
did one in Queensland, it cost me $6,000.
Was the wiring really bad, or what was the?
I think the wiring couldn't take it.
What kind of things were they running?
If the wiring's all dodgy and stuff as well, then that's a whole other job within itself. But if it's just wiring's okay, but it doesn't meet compliance, take it off, put another one on, you're looking at around $1,100 to $1,300. If there was this thing where they were like, cool, switchboard upgrades need to be done, this is what it's gonna cost. But then I started realizing that a lot of them don't necessarily need to have a full upgrade to meet compliance. So now we work with our safety auditors to understand which ones require a full upgrade and which ones just need a couple of RCDs and stuff to meet compliance. So we've been able to bring the cost down completely in those situations.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. Well, this has been a very insightful chat. I want to start answering some of the questions that people have in here, and then also chat to like, what are your best top like picks of areas and suburbs where you're like, you know what, this is the place to look at, because you got your place for $1.2 million. If I had $1.2 million and looking to invest it somewhere, I definitely wouldn't be putting that type of capital in the Geelong market. But if I had another certain price range, I would be thinking definitely that there's some long-term opportunity there. So we're going to run our last ad, and then we can chat to that.
A couple of price points.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make. Boom. That's what we want.
We're back.
Good decisions.
So what I was going to say, should we get into opportunities first show? Well, so yeah,
that's what they are.
Should we talk to different price points? So I broke this up, and feel free to correct my price points, but I think the first one I'd be looking at is if you had between sort of 400 to 500, and if you want to drop that to 350, up to you, but I think below
where are you going to get 350?
Well, you could. I reckon Cryo. Definitely, there's properties in there, but you're going to have to get your hands really dirty. You could pick something up for high freeze. But yeah, drop it to 350 if you want, but 400 to 500, where are some opportunities?
Yeah, so I'd be looking at Cryo Nor Lane, would be if you're looking into the northern suburbs, and then if you're looking at the eastern suburbs, then you're looking at Breakwater, Thompson, Whittington, and then Newcomb. But Newcomb's heading into that sort of 500, unless you're going to do a little bit of work.
Yeah, and there's those these more southern suburbs that you're talking about here. So Whittington, Newcomb, these are surrounded by some like Thompson. They're surrounded by very expensive areas as well, which is kind of what you want to see. You want to see a little bit of a ripple effect. Norlane and Corio is surrounded by itself. Corio is Corio by itself. And there's a lot of pockets within Corio that are a little bit, rough, which is fine. And there are some really good pockets in there as well that I think there is some value. Norlane's here standalone, but then there's some geographical boundaries that stop it from kind of getting taken in. So this pocket here, I think, is this part considered part of Norlane? Or maybe it's down here, but it's when you start to get into these areas, it gets a little bit more expensive. And this area, Bell Post Hill, is really affecting the prices of Bell Park because of how nice it is. And you start to see that ripple effect. And that's kind of what I think you're talking about here is like these areas are like, how much is East Geelong? Like, obviously you don't know you may not know off the top of your head, but
800, I'd say. Could be wrong.
Yeah, to get into East Geelong, if it's something entry level, it needs a lot of work. You might find something around that 750.
Okay, and then right, so 750 here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 streets away, you're here at 450, 500.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. And it's
the rental yield in East Geelong though, it's horrible.
Yeah, because you're paying $700,000. But if you're buying something at $500,000 and you're getting $450 a week rent, rather interesting. So you like Whittington
and everything, like if you're looking at Thompson, Breakwater, just over the bridge is going into Belmont, 3216 area, Marshall, and it's right next to the growth corridor. And then if you continue to go further up, if you're in Newcomb, which is right next to East Geelong, that's right near the waterfront. So you can spend $450 to $500 and be almost within walking distance, depending how long you want to walk. You can take the Eastern Loop, and you're on the waterfront, or you're in Geelong CBD.
That's very interesting. Like, I mean, well, it's not very interesting. When I say that, I'm like, I want to go on. Maybe we shouldn't talk about these potential arbitrage. I mean, so what is the reason why Newcomb is a lot cheaper? Is it just more kind of the demographics of the area? Like, why is it so much? Why is it
was a neighborhood watch area for some time. Yeah. So Newcomb, Whittington, and Breakwater didn't have the best reputation over the last 10 to 15 years. St Albans Park was the first one, and I saw that someone just mentioned St Albans Park. That was really the first area that sort of became more like the prestige area of 3219, I guess. So to buy in there, you are looking at a higher price bracket now. So as an investment, the yields don't make sense unless you are within that price range. But then Whittington's still a little bit lower relative, because it's sort of like a Corio Norlane, like it's its own suburb within a suburb. It's quite a large area. But then when you look at East Geelong and looking at the little pockets that are just outside of East Geelong, and that's when you start looking at Newcomb, Breakwater, Thompson. They're starting to get a lot of momentum because it's cheap and because it provides a really great lifestyle.
That's what we want. Okay, so that's up to 450. So now you have, what is it, 450 to 500, 550? Where are we?
Yeah, if you're going into the 475.
What are you saying, Jeff?
It was 4 to 5. So the next bracket I was throwing in was probably 5 to 600. Is that too big of a, or 500 to 650 or?
We can go as minute as you want. Yeah. So if you're going into the 5 to 600, you can start looking at Belmont Grovedale, but that's sort of going into the high fives now, sixes. Bell Park, Bell Post Hill is starting to get up there as well, and then you can start looking at St Albans Park when you're in that as well. But then you've got areas that start opening up, such as Marshall, which is in 3216, but it's right next to the growth corridor.
So why do you like Marshall? Because I see Marshall and I see a large land supply and I see small blocks all huddled together very tightly. What's drawing you to Marshall?
It's I had an interesting conversation today. He told you about it as well?
Yeah, he told me all about his ideas.
Look, to be honest, Marshall's not personally on my radar. You get about a 480 per week return for something that you're spending upwards of 575 to 600 for. So to me, it doesn't make sense when you're looking at it from an investment point of view. But it is it is a good location if you are looking at being on that side, but you don't want to be as far as Armstrong Creek and dealing with all the infrastructure and road issues and stuff that are happening with the growth that's happening in Armstrong Creek. So Marshall's been a good area for that. Kieran went on about his love for Marshall and the growth that's going to be happening there. And if the property price range was in a lower range, I would probably be as excited. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that area, but I'm not as excited about that area as what I am other areas.
Yeah. So
as an investor, yeah.
What are your top picks for long-term capital growth for Geelong? Like what are your top 3 suburbs that you really, really think, you know what, I'm going to invest 500 and it's going to turn into a lot more than that? Or because you say I'm going to put $1 million in, you're probably not going to get 1.5, but if you put 500 in, you're probably going to get 850 or 700 in a certain amount of time. Where are those kind of pockets for you? I know you've already mentioned them in this session, but just rattle them off.
Yeah,
let's crystallize those areas.
18 months ago, if I had the money, I would have been going into Bell Park, Bell Post Hill, or North Geelong. They were my picks, and I was correct. Because seeing what the prices were compared to what they are now, there has been growth in there, but I just couldn't buy. But anyone who had purchased in there have seen relatively good growth. But then right now, I'm personally, if I am going to be investing into the Geelong market, which I am looking at Geelong, but I'm also looking at cash flow and all those sort of things as well. So Geelong has been my market as a property manager and as a place that I live. But when I look at an investment strategy, I'm also looking at outside like Colac as well, which is an area that we haven't even talked about.
Interesting. Colac.
Yeah.
It's a bit
whole other area. Yeah. But if I was just looking in the Geelong market, it would be the pockets within Norlane and Cryo. I definitely would look at that. But I'm more favouring personally towards the 3219 Newcomb, Thompson, Breakwater area. If I'm looking at just straight up returns and long-term growth.
Yeah. So you're saying Bell Post Hill and Bell Park have kind of they had a great run. They're now trying to hand the torch over to some of these more affordable pockets that can still reach that new height. Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing that I think is very, very important in the Geelong market is there's a lot, like I've been to a lot of suburbs, a lot of towns in Australia, there are a lot of not spots in Geelong. It's very, very important that you go to these places and look at every single street, because it's not as like, there are other suburbs where it's very clear that it's just this little square here. Don't go there. And it's an entire circle. Whereas it's like, no, this street is really good. This street is really bad. This street is really good. The top of this street's really bad. But then when you get down to the bottom here, it's okay. So I think local knowledge is boots on the ground, and local knowledge, use those to your advantage, because you're going to have to as a property investor, because you can definitely get stuck in these markets. I think where you can get you can buy really bad, like Corio is known for its roughness, but there are pockets where you can understand why. You gotta just go there and check it out. So this has been an awesome session. This has been really good. I think it's broken down and helped understand the Geelong market a little bit more. Are there any other kind of insights and tips to share with Geelong?
Yeah, I think it's just, I think the main thing is really understanding that Geelong as a whole is not just, hey, this is Geelong. There's so many pockets within pockets, and suburbs within suburbs, and streets within streets, that it's really good to have someone that can sort of give you those insights to be able to provide that feedback and make sure that you know exactly what you're getting, and really looking at the numbers as well, because when we're looking at vacancy rates and yields, they vary so widely. Yeah.
And I also think that it's a market for value add as well. There are areas and pockets like, and there are a lot of unrenovated properties in certain areas, but there's also a massive price disparity between renovated and unrenovated. So you always want to look out for that as well. That was exactly like that one that I was talking about in North Lane. I saw the opportunity. I bought it for $280, and I added a $1,500 wall, turned it into a 3-bedroom. And would it sell for $360 on the market? No. But as soon as I called up RP Data and changed the number from a 2-bed to a 3-bed, it fit that median price. RP Data and the banks then saw that opportunity. They said, oh, well, that's a 3-bedroom. The median house for that price is $360. It's not a 2-bed. Now it's a 3-bed. So those type of things are a great way to get equity and use it that way. So there's those opportunities exist out there, especially the layouts. Actually, now that I think about it, the layouts of the house lend themselves to that much easier. Are you seeing a lot of people doing that?
Doing
like converting rooms and bathrooms and things, like adding a new room, adding a new bathroom.
Yeah. Well, even the one that I went through today, I always look at it from what would be the easiest way to be able to add capital value, because if we're looking at just say looking at 3219, 3214, most of them are 3-bed, 1-bath, but there's a lot of floor plans that lend themselves to be able to do a renovation to either add an extra bathroom or add or there's another living area or another study that might be big enough to be able to add an extra bedroom. And my only advice there is do the numbers on both. Is it worth putting the money in it now? Is it actually going to get you the returns? And if it is, great, put the work into it. If not, then it might be something that gradually happens over time.
There's a great question that's come up, and we'll wrap up pretty soon. Geelong is also good for rooming. So that's a statement, but also a question, I guess. Is Geelong good for rooming houses?
That's from Lisa. So a Geelong local.
Oh, well, a Geelong local with rooming.
Yeah. So, and Lisa might be more qualified to talk about the rooming side of it. I have managed rooming houses before, and I do know that as there is definitely a lot of interest in it, because people are now making the choice to put their even if they're just renting the property, the tenants will look at putting a room up for rent and getting roommates in to make it more affordable.
God.
Yeah. And my whole thought process is, well, if your tenant is doing it, then why aren't you? Like just look at what the market's doing and leverage off what's actually happening within the demographic. But the other thing to consider with rooming houses as well is you have separate tenancies within the tenancy. So when they're all filled and when they're all occupied and when it's running really great, it's fantastic. But if you have 9 rooms and 3 of them are only filled and then you're still paying the overheads, then that's something that has to be taken into consideration when you're putting the long-term stats together.
Yeah, 100%. Like you need to make sure that you've got some vacancy built in, but also you've got 9 tenants and a third of them can go down. Whereas if you've got 1 tenancy, you lose all the monies. So
that's exactly right.
You only
so
lose
there's pros and cons to both. Yeah. And rooming and rooming houses is definitely a popular option. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting as well when you think, affordable markets, I shouldn't be buying in affordable markets because of, whatever, insert your own preconceived notions. But you've told us from the start that this isn't an affordable market for rent. And we're trying, like, people can't afford to pay those crazy rents. It's just the way it is. So if you can cut up a house and somehow make it into a rooming house and, see Ina Garde for all of that stuff, he does that. You can then tailor that to that audience. That's what those people need. How do I create the product that those people need? Well, there you go. Done.
I think for me, it's kind of like Airbnb. There's potential, but I think I've seen Davina. I mean, we've interviewed Davina, and it can be an absolute full-time job if you want to manage it yourself, and if you're not managing yourself, so. Not all that glitters is gold, and I just imagine the spats that could happen if you get the wrong people in their personalities could clash. So I'm the risk kind of it could be an opportunity, but just go in with your eyes open. Make sure you're doing everything according to legislation.
A lot of owner occupiers are also looking at getting roommates in or renting out their rooms separately as well. So the conversations that I'm having with investors is going well beyond just what is it going to be to, like, how much is it going to cost to get this ready and to rent out my house. They're also looking at, okay, well, I've got these rooms available. That's where the market's going at the moment. Is there a way that I can leverage off this and have my vacant rooms actually be filled and earn some extra income off that? I can't get into those conversations because it goes outside of the Residential Tenancies Act. Like, I have to look at it from that perspective. But then when I take off my property manager hat and put my investor money-making hat on, I can see why these are becoming more conversations and topics that are coming up. And there's even a lady in Melbourne who is she's created a business called the Room Exchange, and it's to facilitate agreements and conversations between people that are choosing to live together.
Oh, what a little business! That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I'd seek tax advice on that as well prior to doing anything like that, because I think it can get there's a little grey area on what that does for CGT or for capital gains tax and PPOR exemption. I don't know exactly, with
your PPOR. Yeah. But if you're doing it just purely an investment, it would just fall under.
Well, even if you're sort of doing, if you're doing it not doing a cash job, then maybe a different story. But I'm not suggesting people do that. Should be very vigilant. So somebody's saying it's a CGD trigger. So there you go. Just chat to your accountant.
On your PPOR,
I'm not an accountant.
Yeah. Well, it's as soon as you start earning income, then that's something that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. Well, this has been an unreal session. Thank you for tonight. It's clear you're Geelong equivalent to Jackie Skeen in Logan.
And Jackie's amazing. I'm taking that as a compliment. Thank you.
That is a compliment. That is an absolute compliment.
I didn't go as far as saying Ashley. I hope Ashley doesn't mind me saying this, but Ashley Goodchild over in Perth as well. It's I think that's. I don't know if you're in her mentoring, but
she's Yeah, she does. She does amazing work, and I'll be helping her with spreading the word with what she's been doing in the property management community. I've joined up in PM Collective and going to be sort of helping her with running events and stuff down here. So she does amazing work in the Perth market.
How can people learn more? How do we get more Sophie in our life? How do we do it?
Well, come to the event.
Yes, great. Here it is here, by the way. Guys, come to the event. This is our first ever live event. If you have not, like, actually, one thing, just so I can call it out.
You haven't done the event post yet, Joe, as well. Like, people want to tune in and watch the wisdom. I'm going to do the event post.
Yeah, please do. But one thing I think is worthwhile mentioning is, like, Jeff, like, I met Jeff at one of these networking events, and we've created something pretty incredible here in the property space because we didn't have any property friends. We didn't have people that we knew in property space. We didn't have a community. We didn't have a network. We didn't have anybody. But everything that we've kind of created is through these networking events. So it's not really about Oz Property. It's not really about Sophie. It's about you meeting people that are similar minded, that live, within a 50 kilometer, 100 kilometer radius, where you can spitball ideas and have a chat with about on the property space. So it's not really about, well, it is about charity. You can help charity. It's not about the beers, but you are going to learn some stuff as well. So it is an awesome opportunity. We've got some really good speakers speaking how the property landscape and consumer behavior has changed. So that one's actually going to be, it sounds boring, but Emily is an unreal.
What do you mean? That's not boring. I mean, that's absolutely vital, Joe.
It's absolutely vital, and it's going to be something that you haven't heard before as well.
Hope Emily's not watching.
Yeah. No, you're around property. We're around property nerds. Of course, it's exciting. That's exciting.
Yeah, that's true. These are our property people. But we got Wes. What is property looking like and beyond? Sophie, you're going to be talking about some of those renting options, about how to increase your profitability, which is some different strategies that we haven't even touched on today. Joe Tucker, what a guy. Opportunities of leveraging the assets that you've got. How can you do more with what you currently have? Not necessarily buying more. And then we've got strategic structures for growing your portfolio. This is going to be an unreal session. This is going to be unreal. And you can come. It's in the Black Sheep in Geelong, Wednesday, the 14th of June. Look at that. We've got people looking forward to it. We've got a lot of people coming. So you guys should just come because I want to meet you. Say hello. We just sit here all day, every week, looking at our same little faces, and we have a new guest. And then you don't realize there's, 50, 30, 100 people just watching and listening. So it'd be cool to meet everyone. But I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about the opportunities in Geelong. So Sophie, thank you very much. What's your business called?
It's under REG Group. It's Real Estate Geelong.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Real Estate Group. So if you need an amazing boots on the ground property manager, have a chat with Sophie.
Sophie a call.
Market.
And I think the beauty of talking to somebody like Sophie is that she knows in a market like Geelong, and she knows a lot of the agents as well. So she can kind of give you some insight into the way that things actually, the lay of the land, because that's the sort of thing, like, regardless of whether it's like every market and every sort of town operates a little differently, and people run their real estate business a little differently as well. And just understanding that is absolutely, if you don't understand that, you may go in and sort of maybe burn a few bridges pretty quickly if you're trying to transact in a way in the location that you're used to. So yeah, but good on you I really appreciate you coming on, Sophie, at relatively short notice. We asked you to jump on because and we would have. I think you're an absolute wealth of knowledge, and thanks for letting us tag along with the event in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, it won't be in Geelong, but it'll be a great night, and there'll be many great conversations, and maybe another Joe and Jeff kind of in a couple of years' time. Joe will be appearing on somebody else.
We created a monster. Yeah, I met at the Oz Property event with Sophie, and we created the absolute competitor and kicked the crap out of him. Good, do it.
I don't mind. It's okay. It's all about making the property community better.
Created a good community of property investors. So go ahead and do it, please. Love it. Anything else you wanted to mention, Sophie?
It's just been awesome. And thanks for everyone for jumping on. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Brad's love it. They've gone wild.
People are loving it. We will see you in Geelong. Sydney is king, but Geelong is better. Look at that. Everyone's loving it. Great. Have a great evening, everyone. Let's go buy a property. We'll see you later.